You know that specific moment in the car park? Someone glances at the car, registers the year, does a small calculation, and says something that is meant to be helpful. Have you thought about upgrading? And you think about the car, the one that starts every morning, the one that passed the last inspection without a single issue, the one whose monthly cost is exactly what it was last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, which is to say, nothing, because it was paid off a long time ago. And you think about what upgrading would actually mean: the payment, the insurance, the depreciation on the way home from the dealership, and the answer forms before the question has quite finished arriving, while the person asking is already mentally shopping for your next car, and you are already thinking about something else entirely. Here is what almost nobody calculates about the car upgrade cycle. The new car is never just a car. When someone buys a new car every 3 or 4 years, trading in before the loan is finished, rolling negative equity into the next payment, starting the depreciation curve again from the steepest possible point, something happens that would not happen if they had simply kept driving what they already owned. The transportation does not improve. The commute is the same length. The number of people the car carries has not changed. The route to work has not changed. What changes is the payment, which restarts, and the depreciation, which restarts, and the cycle, which restarts, as though the previous car had never existed and the money spent on it had simply evaporated somewhere between the first payment and the trade-in value that was considerably lower than anyone expected. A car that is fully paid off and maintained costs dramatically less per month than a car that is financed. Not slightly less, not marginally less, but the difference between a few $100s a month and $0 a month, applied to transportation that performs the same function in both cases, without exception. Nobody sits down and decides to spend $40,000 on a feeling that will last 6 months. They decide to spend $400 a month on a car payment, and the $40,000 and the feeling assemble themselves in the background, 1 month at a time, until the cycle begins again and the previous version disappears into a trade-in value that is considerably lower than anyone remembers paying. There is a name for why a new car feels so much better than the old one, and why that feeling does not last nearly as long as the payment does. Researchers call it hedonic adaptation. Shane Frederick and George Loewenstein, documenting the psychology of well-being in 1999, showed that people return rapidly to their baseline level of satisfaction after positive events, including major purchases. The pleasure of the new car, the smell, the smoothness, the feeling of driving something that has never been anyone else's, is real. It is also temporary. Within 3 to 6 months, the car is simply the car. The commute feels exactly as long as before. What remains is not the feeling. What remains is the payment. Still driving the same car is not a refusal of comfort. It is the recognition that the comfort was never in the car. It was in the newness. And the newness has a shelf life that the payment does not. And hedonic adaptation found an entire industry perfectly positioned to exploit it. The car industry and its financial partners, the lenders and the leasing companies, does not profit from people who drive the same car for a decade. It profits from people who upgrade every 3 or 4 years, re-entering the depreciation curve at its steepest point, carrying negative equity forward, paying interest on a vehicle whose value falls faster than the loan shrinks. The 3-year upgrade cycle is not a natural rhythm. It is a designed one. Still driving the same car is not falling behind. It is the refusal to restart a cycle that was never designed to end in the driver's favor. And the numbers confirm what the paid-off car already knew. According to Edmunds, a new car loses an average of 23% of its value in the first year alone, and approximately 60% of its value within the first 5 years. The person who buys a new car every 3 to 4 years is perpetually in the phase of steepest depreciation, paying the highest possible price for the asset's rate of decline. The person who keeps the same car for 10 or 12 years passes through that phase once and spends the remaining years with a vehicle whose depreciation has already happened and whose monthly cost is whatever maintenance requires. 3 forces. A psychology that makes the new car feel better than it will feel in 6 months. An industry that profits from that gap. And a depreciation curve that punishes re-entry every single time. It was there the first time the car was paid off, the specific month when the payment that had been leaving the account for 5 years simply did not leave, and the quiet arithmetic of what that number now meant for everything else, available for the first time without having been earned differently, just no longer spoken for, sitting in the account with no particular destination and no prior claim on it. It was there the dealership visit. Not to buy, just to look, because looking seemed harmless, and the salesperson showing the numbers on the new model, the monthly payment made to seem small by the length of the loan, the trade-in value offered for the car outside, and the realization, clearly and without drama, that the trade-in value was less than 2 years of the payment being proposed, and that the car outside still drove perfectly, had passed inspection without comment, and had given no indication of intending to stop. It was there, the year of noticing what the absence of a car payment made possible. Not dramatically, not all at once, just the specific texture of a monthly budget that had one fewer line in it, and what that line had quietly been preventing for the years it was there. It was there the question, asked by someone who genuinely meant well, over dinner or in a car park or at a family gathering. Don't you ever want something newer? And the honest answer, not defensive, not proud, just accurate. The car goes where it needs to go. It has always gone where it needed to go. Nothing about that has changed. These are not people who don't care what they drive. Most of them chose the car carefully, researched the reliability ratings, checked the long-term ownership costs, bought something that would last rather than something that would impress, and have maintained it consistently for exactly that reason. Because a car that lasts was always the point, not a car that was new. What they do not do is treat the car as a signal that needs to be updated every few years to stay current, as though the vehicle were a statement about who they are now, rather than a tool for getting from one place to another reliably at whatever cost maintenance requires, rather than whatever cost a new loan demands. They are the person who, when someone mentions they are thinking about upgrading, asks a question that surprises. What's wrong with the one you have? That is not someone without taste or ambition. That is someone who separated, a long time ago, the function of the car from the feeling of having a new one, and found that the function was entirely available. Without the feeling, at a fraction of the cost, for considerably longer than the upgrade cycle allows. They do not feel the pull of the new model when it arrives in the showroom. That pull was examined, found to be temporary, expensive, and specifically designed to restart a cycle that had never ended in anyone's financial favor, and set aside, without drama, the year the last payment cleared. Now, finally, the objection. At some point, a car becomes more expensive to maintain than it is to replace. Reliability matters, and there are real reasons to need something different, a growing family, a job change, something that simply wore out. This is not about driving a car until it falls apart, or refusing to replace something that genuinely needs replacing. There are real reasons to buy a new car. A family that no longer fits, a vehicle that has become unreliable, a professional need that changed. Nothing here argues against replacing a car that needs replacing. This is about the upgrade that happens not because anything changed, but because 3 years passed and a new model exists, and the old one still starts, still passes inspection, still goes where it needs to go, unchanged in every practical sense except that it is no longer new. And the maintenance gets expensive argument carries less weight than it assumes. The average annual maintenance cost of a well-maintained older vehicle is considerably lower than the average monthly payment on a new one. The car that costs $800 a year to maintain costs less than a single month of many new car payments. The comparison is rarely made because the payment feels normal and the repair bill feels like a crisis. The people who still drive the same car are not avoiding reality. They are simply refusing to treat a feeling as a financial reason. Here is what most people get backwards. The person who upgrades every few years, who trades in before the loan is done, who rolls the negative equity forward, who re-enters the depreciation curve at its steepest point every time the new model arrives, is not progressing. They are paying repeatedly for the most expensive part of owning a car. The first years, when the value falls fastest and the payment is highest, and the feeling of newness is already fading. The person who still drives the same car is not standing still. They pass through that phase once. They are on the other side of it, where the car is paid off, the depreciation has happened, and the only cost is keeping something running that already works. Most people upgrade the car because the new one genuinely feels like progress. These people know that real progress and a new car payment are not the same thing. And the car in the driveway is 10 years old this year, and it goes exactly where it needs to go. There is a moment people who still drive the same car all describe in almost the same way. It is not the year it was paid off. It is not the dealership visit they walked away from. It is an ordinary morning, getting into the same car for the 10th year, turning the same key, pulling out of the same driveway, and noticing, briefly, that the car has simply disappeared from the thinking. Not as a decision, just gradually. It became just another tool, something that starts, that arrives, that stops asking for attention. And the moment something you own stops asking for your attention, it has finally started doing its job. Not because new cars are wrong, because the feeling they provide was never the point, and the payment is. The car was never the point. What being willing to drive the same one for a decade said about everything else was. 10 years from now, nobody remembers what you drove. They ask whether the payment ever stopped something else from being possible. Are you still driving the same car, or does a new model every few years feel like the only way to stay current? Drop it below. We read every single one.